tonight we have Tim, who is here, and I'm gonna butcher Jasinski.
Got it.
Okay. So he is a wildlife rehabilitation specialist at the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center, and co-founder of Lights Out Cleveland, which makes urban landscapes safer for migratory birds. And if you were a part of any of our winter sowing workshops this past, I don't want to say winter because we're technically still in winter. In January or February, we actually did a winter sowing workshop at the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. So some of you might have been there already. So I'm going to, let's see, exit out of this and start this one. And you have the floor, Tim.
Okay. So it's like we were just talking, it's spring migration right now. And one of the first signs for me of spring migration and just spring in general is typically the first killdeer that I hear flying over, which I heard 2 weeks ago. And when the woodcock start coming through, American woodcock that's actually the bird on the Lights Out Cleveland logo there. That's the kind of one of the first birds, at least for rehabilitators, for us at Lake Erie Nature and Science. And when we know spring is here and the birds are on the move, they're one of the first birds to come through for like the spring migrants. Now we have pretty much migration, which is interesting, happens almost year round for many different species. And other than June, really June, everything is pretty much on their breeding grounds, breeding or finishing breeding, and getting ready to leave. And so July through, June or July through May, birds are moving, whether they're going south or north or whatever, all different species. And so the woodcock is actually what triggered Lights Out Cleveland to happen, because in 2016, we admitted 18 woodcock from the general public at Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. We don't have a way to go out and rescue animals, so we rely on the public to bring them to us. So 18 woodcock were brought in from the general public, which is a lot of birds, and that was in spring. And so that, it's there's so many things in rehabilitation that are human caused, whether it's cat attacks or window strikes, dog attacks, power lines, glue traps, poison. Like there's so many things that were listed that are causing issues for migratory birds or other animals that are human related. So I was just kind of mad. I'm like, we need to do something about this. This is infuriating. And so at our annual wildlife conference in Columbus, we have Ohio Wildlife Rehabilitation Association, which I'm a board member for, hosts a wildlife conference every fall. It's in the beginning of November, and I ran into Matt Schumar with Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative there. He did a talk about Lights Out, and so I ran up to him after the meeting and said, "Yo, we got to get this going. We got to get this going in Cleveland." And to back up a little bit, even though I'm the kind of founder of Lights Out Cleveland, technically I give Harvey Webster, the former chief wildlife officer for the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, the credit for that, because he was kind of the idea of it, but it never really got off the ground in the early 2000s. A woman that used to work at one of the larger buildings downtown, her name is Sue Roman, she would bring us birds from her. She was a security guard, and she would pick up all these birds that were hitting the building at her building. She'd collect them all up and hide them in her locker, and then she'd bring them to us at the end of the day. And so we would donate the casualties that didn't make it to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History for the research collection. Well, that kind of got Harvey thinking, hey, let's get something going in Cleveland. And nothing really ever got off the ground, just because, that was, the early 2000s. And, with what Harvey had said, it's, we're a city that's just kind of getting out of the rust belt. We're just starting to get booming again. And why would we want to turn off the lights when they're just getting turned on? So nothing really happened, but then bounced to 2017. That spring is when we got a bunch of people together, Akron Zoo, Ohio Lights Out, which is Matt Schumar with Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative, Lake Erie Nature and Science, and a couple other partners that said, how can we do this? What can we do? So I got a bunch of friends and zookeepers and rehabbers together to start our first monitoring program. And that's when it started in spring of 2016, 17 rather. And we actually took data from the woman that was rescuing the birds because she would run around downtown after her shift and collect birds. So we took all the information that she kind of gathered, and I worked with the former curator of ornithology at the museum, Dr. Andy Jones, a good friend of mine, and him and I sat down and kind of mapped out where these birds are likely to be found, and we kind of targeted those areas, but we just learned over time where birds and bats actually are being affected by downtown landscapes, and that's how we started it. So on average, we collect around 3,000 birds and around 20 to 50 bats a year down there that are affected by light pollution and window collisions. And the whole goal of this program is to reduce lighting and reduce window collisions by education and getting the lights turned off, and getting window film attached to the buildings. Now obviously I don't do that part of it. Like, my part as Lake Erie Nature and Science, we take the birds and bats that are injured and dead. All of them come to us. Now Cleveland Metro Parks is in charge of the monitoring program now. Back in the day, I did all of it through the center, but we branched out and had other places help. So now Cleveland Metro Parks takes over the monitoring aspect of it with collecting the birds downtown with all the volunteers. So if you are interested in becoming a volunteer, which we need more of, you can just go to Cleveland Metro Parks website, or Ohio Lights Out, and there should be a link there to join and become a Cleveland Metro Parks volunteer, and then you can start helping downtown. But basically, once we're on the ground, we walk around from basically a little bit before dawn to after dawn, and that's when most of the birds are hitting these windows. Because what happens is most songbirds migrate at night, so they're following the night sky, a lot of celestial cues that we don't really understand as humans, and they just move. They instinctively move. It's incredible. So when they're flying at nighttime, the lights actually affect their navigation. So when they're flying over Canada, when there's no lights, or just they're cruising, but when they get to a city, the lights affect them, just like kind of a moth at your porch light. It'll fly and they just get disoriented. I've actually seen hundreds of birds at one time circling one building in the rays of light that are shot up from these little or big, really, like decorative lighting. You can just see the birds circling, chipping and chipping. They make chip notes as they're flying, and so they're just circling and circling, stuck in this light. I actually watched one bird fly in a little like a little zigzag through the light, all the way from the ceiling all the way down to the ground one year, which was pretty crazy to see. And so these birds that are trapped down there don't understand the concept of glass. They don't know that it's a barrier. So when they're flying around, there's three reasons why birds collide with windows. The number one reason is it's a reflection. So they see it as an extension of the habitat. So when they're flying, they see a tree, but it's actually tree to glass, and they're seeing that reflection, thinking it's an extension. So they fly full force into that. The second reason is it's at night, it's dark, it's at nighttime or early dawn before it gets light out. And a lot of the buildings have their lights on in the building. So the bird is attracted to that white light that's in the building. So they'll fly from a tree that's dark to that light, and then they hit the pane of glass there. And the third reason, which is the less of the three, are when a predator is chasing them. We often see that with Cooper's hawks, where they're chasing a starling or a pigeon, and then the pigeon hits the window, and then the hawk does, and they both fall to the ground. So there's, interestingly, two collisions when a bird hits a window. They hit the window and then they fall to the ground. So the team is down there collecting these birds from every spring and fall, from March 15th through the beginning of June, and then August 15th through mid-November-ish. It depends on how the migration goes. Spring, it's got to be quick. The birds got to get up there fast. There's no time to waste. But in the fall, they have a little bit more wiggle room on how to get out of their breeding territory and head south. So they're kind of no real rush, so to speak, to get out there, besides getting out of the weather that could be harmful to them. And so they migrate. They migrate south in the fall. And interestingly, there's more birds collected and found in the fall than there are in spring. And there's a couple reasons for that. The main reason is that there's just all the young birds are moving through for their first flight down south. So there's more birds in the air, so to speak, heading south. Another reason is migration routes. Like in the spring, we get very little blackpoll warblers, which is an incredible athlete of the sky. When you think people think athletes, they think LeBron James and all these other sports guys I know nothing about. I don't know anything about sports, but the blackpoll warbler makes an incredible migration from Alaska and the northern parts of Canada to the east coast in the fall. And they double their body weight by the time they get there. And then they go out into the middle of the ocean and follow the northeast trade winds straight to Venezuela. I think it's Venezuela, one of those in a nonstop flight of up to 3 days. And that's insane that a little songbird that's 12 grams that is flying nonstop day in, day out for 48 to 72 hours. That's just incredible. So migration's amazing. And I could talk about birds forever, but really this talk is specifically about Lights Out Cleveland and what we do down there as volunteers rescuing these birds. So this is an all volunteer effort. There's certain people that are paid, like Jake that works for Cleveland Metro Parks. He was our volunteer coordinator, and things are going to be changing. He just got a promotion, so things are changing a little bit. But basically, it's just a bunch of people that care about birds and care about nature, heading downtown and picking up these birds. And so we walk around with nets, and we're all in, we have vests and nets and bags, little paper bags we put the birds and bats in. So when a bird hits a window, they're usually concussed. They don't die from a broken neck. That's kind of a myth. They actually die from cranial swelling, basically brain bleeding after they hit the window. So they hit the window and fall, and our teams are walking around the buildings just repeatedly and picking up birds as they're falling. And so we put them in paper bags. We label what building it was found, the time of day, what side of the building, and any other notes that we can collect. And so that way we learn where the hot spots are. So when a building manager or owner understands that their building may be a problem, they will reach out to they'll reach out to us and say, hey, what building or what part of the building, it needs addressed potentially. And so like Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, or I think it's named something new or different now. I don't know. But they changed their name. But anyway, they reach out to us and they know that their building is a problem. And so they actually just this last fall put bird divert on that north facing slope or side of the building where most of the collisions happen. And so hopefully this spring through this fall this year, we'll be able to tell the difference from pre treatment of the building to post treatment. So it'll be really interesting to see. But basically, when there's a film put up, it's a 95 to 100% reduction in the collisions. So that's really huge. So anybody that wants to join and help on our team, that's a really good feeling that you're part of rescuing these birds and bats. Somebody saw in the chat asked about bats. Bats do get affected too. I don't know if they hit the windows. I'm sure they can, but I think more so with the bats that their echolocation is thrown up by all of the reflections of the bouncing of their echolocation in these little kind of courtyards or little areas where there might be a lot of bouncing of their echolocation. I think that's why they get trapped. They kind of fly around. They're kind of not really understanding how to navigate, and then eventually get tired and come to the ground, and they're rescued by excuse me, the team of volunteers that are trained to handle bats because they are a rabies vector species. So we want to make sure that they're safe in collecting those because, bats can carry rabies and we don't want people to get that. So our team has certain volunteers that are either vaccinated for it or Penitentiary Glen is another a group that help that will help with take bats. And so they have a team of volunteers and staff that will come down and meet us in the down there. If there's a bat found, we'll let them know and they'll come down and help collect the bat safely and get it to either Penitentiary Glen Wildlife Center or Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. So it's a really awesome program. And the great thing about Lights Out Cleveland, it's the largest in the Midwest. I mean, we have Chicago, which is the first one to start a Lights Out program in North America, or in the United States rather, and FLAP, which is Faded Light Awareness Program in Canada, was the first one to actually realize that collisions are a problem. Let's figure out what to do. And so Cleveland is one of the largest in the country because we're on a perfect a migratory pathway here through Cleveland. We have a great place here in Cleveland for birds, and it's just incredible here. Unfortunately, that can cause an issue with being right on the lake and on a big city. So that kind of can make with a bunch of different angles to cause an issue. So we know Cleveland's an issue. So that's why we collect one of the largest amount of birds really in the area. So out of all of Ohio, I mean, our numbers in Cleveland are way higher than any other, probably all the other, you know, groups combined with Ohio Lights Out Columbus and Toledo Lights Out and all the other groups that are in the state. It's just a lot of birds. So we've collected over, I think, 150 species so far of birds. A wild turkey we collected that was unfortunately dead, that hit one of the windows. Wood ducks, saw-whet owls, tons of hummingbirds, woodcocks, woodpeckers, all the warblers, all the sparrows, all the thrushes. It's just incredible how many birds are affected, and it's really easy to prevent. Collisions are easy to prevent. You know, reduce your lighting, have lighting facing down instead of facing up. Reduce any lighting that does need to be needed for safety. And then if you have collisions at your own house, which anyone that has glass, I'm sure there's going to be a collision at one point or another. There's film made by companies like Feather Friendly that you could buy at your own house to prevent the collision. So it's really, really effective. And then that helps the birds and helps our environment. We've lost 25% of our songbird population since the 70s, and they're not coming back. And a couple reasons of that are obviously habitat loss and you know, climate change, and pesticides. You know, we like to kill insects for some reason that we need, and that affects the birds when they're migrating north or south. Keeping cats indoors, things like that can really help bird populations. And you know, they're in trouble already, and we need birds for many reasons. They're pollinators. They help plant trees. They eat seeds that then they disperse in their poop. That helps plant those trees in another area. And so another way to help, you know, songbirds and other wildlife is support native wildlife by planting native trees, native plants. I have a little Parma Heights yard, but I have a small little prairie in there that I have, that I did the wrong way, by the way. I should have done it the way that Alice and everyone at Wild Ones would recommend, but I did it kind of backwards. I just did a seed scatter in grass, and that kind of turned out to be the wrong way. So if you want to do a little prairie, research how to do it the right way so you're not working backwards. But plant natives. We're always educating on planting natives at Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. You know, that way it helps our native insects, which then helps our native birds, which helps native reptiles, amphibians, all the different you know, the flora and fauna that we have here in our state. And so you know, it's really helpful. Even if it's a little tiny, my little yard is tiny. It's a little postage stamp, but I have a lot of different species that visit my yard, a lot of monarchs. I've had Baltimore Orioles, Orchard Orioles, and ruby-throated hummingbirds all on my trumpet vine back there. So plant natives. Keeping your kitties indoors. I have 10 cats. My whole yard, not my whole yard, but my whole room up here. This is the cat room upstairs. It's for all my kitties. And so keeping them indoors, it's safer for them and safer for our native wildlife. And there's so many things you could do to help save native wildlife. You know, recycle as much as you can. Keep your lights off. They're just, you know, don't use insecticides. Don't use glue traps. Oh, glue traps are horrible. We're always educated not using those. And so there's a lot of things you could do to help native wildlife, and it's just a couple quick things are treating your windows, keeping your kitties indoors, and planting natives. I mean, it's just one main thing we're always educating on. So I don't know if there's probably time for some questions. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I do talk really quickly. So, bird friendly coffee. Yes, I forgot about that. So coffee is a naturally grown, a shade grown plant. So they grow in the rainforest in the lower level underneath the canopy. And so always, if you can, buy bird friendly coffee. It's safe for the birds. And what they do is they actually don't remove the whole rainforest. If there's a rainforest that was made for coffee, they will remove the lower part and plant the coffee there where the birds and other animals can still use that habitat. And then the canopy is still intact. That is very important for the rainforest. So get bird-friendly coffee. It's really tasty, and it helps our native birds and other animals that live down there in Costa Rica and other places that coffee is grown. So I forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me about that, putting the slide up. So good stuff. And did you want me to talk about the resources on here too, or did you want to talk about it? I guess I put a lot of those
You
on
can
there.
if you or Allison want to touch on them, that's up to you.
Yeah, so Feather Friendly is the group is a company that I talked about earlier. They're out of Canada. They're great people. You can get treatment there. American Bird Conservancy is a great place to learn about birds and to learn about what cats actually have an impact on, how much of an impact they have. So that's a great website to go to. Obviously, Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. If you have a bird or animal that you think may be in need, don't feed it, don't water it, and call us right away. And Ohio Lights Out. Obviously, you can learn about our Lights Out programs throughout the state. And Cleveland Metro Parks is the group that runs the volunteer program through Lights Out Cleveland. So you can go to their website, become a member, or become a Cleveland Metro Parks volunteer, and then that's how you can get onto the Lights Out Cleveland team. And then Akron Zoo they have volunteering through their organization as well. So it's less birds and less bats are collected because it's a smaller city and not as much glass, so that's good for the birds. And I know it may be frustrating when you're trying to want to go on a team that you're rescuing bats and birds, you don't find any. So, but I guess not finding any is actually a good thing. So I think that was it, right? And then we
Ah,
wanted to have some time for questions.
yes, for sure. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Tim? He went through a lot.
I did, and I talked fast. I apologize. I tried to talk slow,
No,
but
it's
there's
totally fine.
so much to cover underneath these things. It's just there's so much.
That is okay. I know in our chat as well, Jessica posted top 10 best native trees in Ohio for supporting
Oh,
birds.
oh,
So
yay!
if anyone wants to scroll through that and see possibly what they might want to plant next in their yard, that's a good list to start.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I have a
Anybody
question.
feel, yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Tim. Very informative and interesting. And I always cringe when I see all of the buildings in downtown Cleveland and how so many of them are just glass. So,
Yeah.
do any of those buildings have bird-friendly, wraps or bird-friendly glass or anything on them? And is there an initiative to try and get that on more of the buildings downtown?
There is, and it's complicated because some buildings are privately owned or they're managed by the county. And so Sunny Simon is a woman that works for the county, and she was real gung ho about getting buildings treated and stopping the collisions. And so with her help, a lot of the county managed and built and owned buildings are getting treated or will be getting treated. Part of the Justice Center had treatment put on it. The convention center is going to be treated or was treated. The Global Health Center, I know that's on the list, and specifically Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse or whatever it's called, now has been treated with bird divert. So that's a huge win. So I think once a building gets on board and you get some publicity about it, other buildings will be like, well, I want to be on this list too. I want to be helping out. So that's what we're hoping is once Rocket Mortgage is on board with that, which it's already. I think they're almost done or done putting the film up. Once we learn and know that there's less collisions there, which there should be, we're going to make that really public, get the news out there, and really show how much of a difference that makes in birds and bats, and it's going to be hopefully a snowball effect down there. So is that the right word? Snowball effect, where it just kind of rolls and gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
That's the goal. So yes, there are buildings, and they're on. There are a lot of buildings already that extinguisher lighting or exterior lighting. I know 200 Public Square, the Huntington building, sign on board, and they do turn out their exterior lights, their I forget what decorative lighting, basically that did in fact cause a lot of issues for birds in the past. Now is extinguished during migration, which is great. So there are buildings that are helping out. The list of those buildings should be on OhioLightsOut.org.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jessica?
So with the potential of a new Brown Stadium, and then especially a domed one, is there already a campaign being worked on to try to convince, if they do go forward with that, to make sure it's bird friendly?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, and that would be a question for Matt Schumar and his team over at Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative, because he's the one that kind of does all the Heben Devon, his new coworker there. She's the one that's going to be in charge of all the lights out efforts, and so those two would be the people to talk to about how to handle new builds. I know that. Sherwin-Williams is another one that we've been trying to talk to. We meaning Matt and Devin. Yes, I mean any new build, the earlier the conversation can start before construction, the better chance of things happening. So yeah.
And do you guys actually also talk with or monitor when new schools are being built? Just because that seems to be a really great time to get in on that, especially also from an education perspective.
It is, and we used to when we had more people back in the day, we used to cover CSU, also Cleveland State University, and actually one of the windows there was a pretty bad place that got treated with feather friendly, and there wasn't a collision found there since. So it is effective, but we don't have enough manpower to cover all of downtown and all the big buildings and all the surrounding schools. So I know there's a lot of different schools like in Lorraine and other places that have their own monitoring program where they're kind of trying to see what's happening to mitigate collisions there. So yeah, we don't. I wish we did, but we just don't have the amount of people needed.
This is a good call out then for
Yeah.
volunteers.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We have Lights Out Cleveland needs many of our volunteers, and any other places at local colleges, I'm sure, get together and can get a monitoring program together and try to find the bad spots and get the live birds to a rehab center that's licensed, and then try to get those windows treated.
That's great. Does anybody else have any questions for Tim?
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
My name is Pam, and
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could touch on how homeowners can help with the different colored lights. I'm hearing yellow, red. What else could we do?
Yeah, so white light is the worst light to use. So that's the light that affects them the most. And I believe, and I could be wrong, we have to research this, but I believe that the green, red lights and blue lights are safer for birds. But I know that you get the higher in the spectrum, like the white lights, that's definitely an issue. I know red for sure is a good light to use. And so if you're gonna use light, use red lights, and that doesn't affect them as much. Any light can, but red is definitely the best to use if you're gonna use a color light. That would be the one I would recommend. Good question though.
Jessica, did you have?
Yeah. So another question I have is are you guys advocating either at the state level or county levels to get certain policies changed? For example, I believe the state of Colorado has certain measures in place with regards to their city lighting and the direction of the light, the type of light it is, it being out at certain times. I do know that, I think that's statewide, I could be wrong, that they have in place for protections like birds, but also other factors as well.
Yeah, so actually we want to have something like that in Cleveland. I know New York just scored that last year or the year before, where they're a bird safe city. And actually, ironically, we have a meeting in Columbus on Friday to talk about bird friendly cities and how to make Ohio, bird friendly. So me and my my supervisor Maggie are going down there and meeting Matt with the Ohio Lights Out and a bunch of other folks down there to have a meeting, and it's going to be really good. So yes, I would hope that Ohio and Cleveland specifically in the future will be designated a bird friendly city.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, keep us in mind if we can help promote it from the native plant perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're always educating on keeping native plants and not using non-natives because we know that, you know, native insects rely on those. I mean, they evolved with them, and so when you have non-native plants, sure, insects will use them, but not like they do with the native plants. So definitely always plant native. I wish we can get to a full statewide level on getting rid of stupid cut grass. That's not native. We don't need it. We spend so much time and money and effort maintaining that. I don't get it. When I look at green grass, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I would love to see a prairie full of black-eyed Susans and milkweed, and it's all the native plants that really, it's just a beautiful, beautiful. When I see a field, I see beauty, but when I see a cut grass, it's just little, this cookie cutter kind of yards that we have in our cities, it disgusts me really. I don't like it.
You're preaching to the choir, Tim.
Hmm. Oh yeah. We're all
Yeah,
like-minded people here.
it's all, everything's related, right? The plants, the
Yeah.
insects, the birds, like it's the life cycle for everything. So,
Yep.
We need to support the plants so that way the insects come and then the birds come and yeah.
Yep.
So any other
Definitely.
questions?
I actually had a question. And this is kind of a complex answer, I imagine. So if you could summarize it, that's totally fine too. I'm kind of curious of how you deal with like city officials and everything that for people who are not thinking about birds, they're really thinking about how much does this cost? What is there a certain strategy or certain things that you talk to them about, like to convince them to get these to care about the birds?
It's a very political thing, and I don't handle that myself personally. That's a job for Matt and
Okay.
Devin, but I know it's a very tricky um, process. Some cities are easier than others. Some buildings are easier than others. But kind of what I've heard over the years is that they don't really care about the money. It's more about looking green and looking like you care about being green. Is kind of the sentiment that I've always heard and understood. So, the saving money is definitely, definitely helpful. But I know it can be very, very tricky, and you have to tread lightly on this topic. So that's where Matt and Devin and their expertise can really do that in a professional way, where they can get things done. That would be a question for them, really. But I know that it's not an easy process. No.
I was thinking earlier when you were talking about whatever that stadium name is now, it would be kind of nice to have some sort of, like certification or some sort of something that they could stick on the window and, a sign on the inside, people walking by, like what it, because it is, I mean, green marketing is all over the place anymore. I mean, the airport has, that pitiful, what do you
Like
call it?
permeable pavers.
Yes. So that's definitely an opportunity. And, I think that what you're talking about is sort of this cultural shift that we need to make. And I think by normalizing it in things like sports arenas, I think people see it,
Right.
they think more, and it becomes more normal.
Yep, and there is, and I believe it's through Lights Out. I could be wrong, but I believe through How Lights Out, you can actually get a certification with a little plaque or something like that. So certainly, and I think there are buildings that have done that, or that have received that. So yeah, that's something that definitely is a good idea, and I know that Matt and Devin have that in the works for certain places. So certainly, yeah, that's it's definitely helpful.
I like that thought, Kim, because you think even for native plants, like you go to a new parking lot, there's a bioswale in the parking, and just to educate people on why do they have this, big bed of scraggly looking plants in here, and there's usually an educational signage on, stormwater management. So, it's kind of thing, especially at a place like you said, like at the arena where there's going to be a lot of foot traffic and a lot of people there,
Mhm.
and not just from Cleveland, from other places too, that can learn, you know, we could lead by example. So that was a great
Right.
point to bring up.
And how cool
Yeah.
would it be if like people's meetup spot became like, oh, wait, you know, hang out at the Lights Out Cleveland sign. That's where I'll meet you.
That'd be sweet. I love it. Let's bring that out. Let's
Re-advertise.
do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Good. This is good. Good discussion.
Yeah.
All right.
If anyone has questions, you can email me at timj@lensc.org. And you know, I'd be happy to answer any emails or questions, or if you go through How Lights Out too, they can filter that back down to me if needed. So no problem. We're always willing to help and answer questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tim. Can you drop your email in the chat before?
Oh yeah.
And you feel free to hang out with us for the rest of the meeting, or if you
Okay.
need to drop, you know, that's perfectly fine too. But thank you so much for chatting with us about your organization and your program and everything that, you know, you guys are doing to help our birds. So we appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no, we're happy to. And thanks for having me.